Yes, here we go. Jessica Segal. Hey, Roundup family, welcome, welcome. Fridays. Fridays, it is attorney time with attorney Jessica Segal. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. Good to be here. Happy Friday.
Yes,
I hear
yes.
you've been locked inside with some bad weather, so I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad everybody's safe.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
God. Thank God we're here,
yeah.
right?
Up in New York, thank God we haven't had any issues, but I have a lot of friends down south who have had mandatory evacuation, and I've been really worried for them. So thankfully everybody's okay, but
Yeah,
not
thank God.
everybody is doing that well.
Hey, we are. I've got daddy daycare and everything, so just bear with
Oh
me.
yeah.
Roundup family, thank you for joining us. You know my mission. I'm Chris Haskins with attorney Jessica Siegel. My mission is to raise your financial literacy through real estate investing and entrepreneurship. Jessica has an interesting topic. Go ahead. Interesting topic for us today. Jay, go ahead. Let's see what you
Yeah,
got.
so we'll make it quick today. Everybody's got a little chaos going on, but there was an article recently out of the San Francisco Chronicle. This woman, this landlord, ended up getting herself arrested and remanded to the jail for forcibly entering one of her properties when the Airbnb guest refused to leave. So I thought that this would be a great topic for us to talk about with people. There's the difference between possession versus ownership. And just because you own the property does not mean legally you can enter that property whenever you want. Once you have a tenant in place, you have to be respectful of your state's laws.
Right.
I could tell you in New York, they're very, very tenant friendly in favor of the tenant. And I can assure you, if you don't give your tenant proper notice of your intent to enter, or you don't enter for a valid reason listed in your lease, you can find yourself arrested.
Wow.
Um, what I thought was interesting about this particular article, and anybody can look it up, it was in the San Francisco Chronicle. The
It's in the
title is
link below, Jay. I'll put it in
uh,
the link below.
Airbnb host. So this was interesting because a lot of your viewers do Airbnb. So this took it to another level. So when you're a landlord, we'll just start with the basics, right? You have to give your tenant notice that you're going to enter, and you have to be entering for a valid reason. Annual inspection or whatever your lease terms require. Maybe there's some maintenance or an emergency repair has to be done.
Okay.
If your tenants stop paying rent, you may not just change the locks. You may not start threatening them, harassing them. You can't turn the electricity off. You can't turn the water off. You have to take proper steps and file paperwork to get them evicted legally. That's your ramification. That's your
Remedy.
option. You can file your paperwork the day after their rent is late and get the eviction process going. Self-help is illegal. But taking it one step further, for these Airbnb entrepreneurs, a lot of people will do what's called arbitrage. So they will enter into long-term leases or apartments. Then they actually flip the property as a rental, a short-term rental. So they will put the lease in their name, but and negotiate a really good rent for the month. But then what they're going to do is they're going to do a short-term rental through Airbnb for nightly rates. So they're making a killing, okay? Which is, smart
I think
entrepreneur,
it's
right?
smart.
Where is
Smart.
this right? Where is this extra cash in the product? That being said, though, you still have to follow the law if you have someone not leave, okay? If somebody reserves the room as an Airbnb and doesn't vacate, you can't just go forcibly in there and throw their stuff on the curb. As much as landlords or Airbnb hosts wish that they can do it because it's very frustrating, you can't. You have to follow the law. So in this particular case, she unfortunately advertised to the world how frustrated she was. She went on Facebook and in these real estate forums and was asking people, "Hey, what do you do when your Airbnb guests won't leave?" So this was a family of five, a husband, a wife, and three teenage kids.
Wow.
They came in for what should have been a night and they never left. It had been, weeks. She was frustrated. They wouldn't leave. They weren't paying. So, because she was in this unique position as a short-term landlord, she had to still file those proper documents and try and get them evicted. The law deemed them tenants. Okay. We would think, okay, they're squatters. They should have no legal rights. But unfortunately, they do. So in this particular case, she decides, hey, listen, I'm having this situation. So several people in the Facebook group tell her, whatever you do, don't change the locks. Don't just go in there. Don't turn off the electricity.
No way.
What does she do? She enlists the help of some undesirables with criminal histories. They bring knives. They turn off the electricity. I mean, there's children in there. They turn off the electricity in the middle of the night, so it's pitch black. They bust in with knives. The person who's illegally staying there doesn't realize what's happening, so he's trying to keep the door shut. He ends up getting stabbed with the knife. He calls the police to report a burglary. And in fact, the woman and all three of the people with her get arrested for felony burglary. They had absolutely no right to engage in that self-help. And now you've assaulted somebody with a knife.
Unbelievable.
So her explanation was, I didn't want to spend the money on an eviction. Okay. Didn't want to spend the money myself or hire an attorney. And now she's in jail on $75,000 bail. They took her passport in case she posts bail, and the judge ordered a stay away order. If she does post bail, she can't go anywhere near her own property.
What?
Will they continue to stay there for free?
The Airbnb guest.
Yes.
I know she is hot.
Yes. So she's in a black and white striped jumpsuit on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle, in jail, in handcuffs, because she decided to try and take matters into her own hands. So the lesson for landlord, and I can assure you, in New York, the same thing would happen. They're very, very strict in New York. Tenants have a lot of rights. So if you find yourself in a situation where your Airbnb guest refuses to leave, immediately file papers in court for a holdover, for a warrant of eviction. File whatever restraining order the court is willing to give you to try and get them out. But at the end of the day, it's frustrating for landlords. We have to pay our bills. We have to pay our mortgage and our utilities, whether people pay us rent or not. And that's the cost of doing business. You have to have a cushion in the bank account when something like this happens. You have to have reserves. Chris, have you heard of anything like this happening with any of your Airbnb host viewers?
I've had it happen to me, but I want to stay here for a minute. Let's talk about possession, ownership, and I want to get into hotels. My mindset is a hotel, that key turns off at a certain time. You can't get into that room, but we're talking a different animal when we're talking about a person's home.
Right.
So possession, Jay, is going to give us the unobstructable right to come and go.
Correct.
Which we don't have, being the owner.
Correct. That's an important distinction. As owner of the property, we do not have the right of possession. And that's another reason it's so important to have a good quality lease in place that outlines the terms. You don't have a
lease with Airbnb.
There's that I provide for my clients an Airbnb short-term agreement.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is new. Okay.
And so this short-term agreement is for Airbnb hosts, and it says right in it that you are not, this agreement does not establish a landlord-tenant contractual arrangement. It says right in it in bold.
You're sharp.
And it says you put them on notice that removal will be commenced, at X time. Whenever you're renting this room from, whatever it is, 11 a.m. to 11 a.m. for 24 hours or for the weekend, whatever it is. And we put right in that document, you must vacate at this time. If not, law enforcement will be contacted. You are not a tenant. You do not have tenant rights.
Wow, Jay, you're a beast. That's why I love talking to you. I'm like, that's something we need to possibly go over for our viewers in the future, Jay.
Yeah,
We have to
yeah,
work on it.
we can provide that for sale as well. But I see this even just in your basic lease for people who think, well, I don't want to have a lease. I'd rather have the freedom to do
Month to month.
whatever I want. If you don't have a lease, there's nothing that allows you to enter that property without some notice. Your tenant can go to court or call the police and try and have you arrested. So, for example, in my lease, I have in there that I may enter on 24 hours notice. I'm not asking for permission. I'm just giving you notice that I'm entering. And I'm going to come in for an inspection under these circumstances. It could be just for monthly inspection, however often you want to do it. Most people do biannual. At the very least, once a year, you want to go in and take a look at your property. If there's any maintenance that must be done or emergency repair, you want to be able to go in whether or not your tenant is giving you authorization because you have to maintain your property.
Right.
Remember, as a landlord, you're required to make it habitable. So if there's no electricity, no water, no heat, things like that, you as the landlord are actually going to be held responsible in court.
So I've had a guy one time, I had a tenant coming in the following day. It was 1 o'clock. He was still in the house, couldn't get on. We showed up. He had apparently overslept. It worked out okay. But my mind started to think, Jay, what am I going to do if someone decides to say, you know what, forget this guy. I'm just going to, hey, I think it would be a major deal getting them out. I'll have to use the court systems, correct?
Right. I mean, and also, like, especially if you have an agreement in place and you were to call up law enforcement and say, look, this person hasn't left. He's not my tenant. He's trespassing on my property. I mean, you can try and use law enforcement to see if they're willing to help. Sometimes when an officer shows up, it kind of motivates someone to keep moving.
That's true.
So there's lots of appropriate legal resources that you can take.
Nice.
I also caution landlords, always your safety first. At the end of the day, this is a business. Your property is a business. Never put yourself in danger. If you know, like in this particular case, she knew there were 2 adults and 3 teenagers. She said, I'm not going to go there myself. She brought 3 men with her with weapons. But that being said, I know for myself also, if I have to go inside of one of my units, I always bring a witness with me, and also for my safety. I don't want anybody to ever say I stole something or, I broke something.
Yeah.
So I will always bring a witness with me.
Good idea.
But it's also for safety reasons.
Well, great. Last thing before we get to questions, ownership. So it's crazy. I have to explain to my coaching clients in my inner circle, just because you own a house doesn't mean, I own a whole bunch of houses, but I can't go to them and go inside. I just can't.
Right.
Jake, go ahead here just a little bit. Stay here just for a few seconds.
Right. And I mean, think about it like this. You may own stock in PepsiCo, right? Or you may own stock in Netflix, but you don't get to just bust into corporate headquarters and sit down in the president's chair and start doing business, right? You just don't get to do that. Same thing with owning property. You own the title and you own the asset, and you get the benefits, financial benefits of owning that property. That does not mean you can enter whenever you feel like it.
Wow.
And if you do, you're going to find yourself arrested or in court.
Yeah, man.
Or worse,
I almost got arrested one time. Yeah, I don't want to get into that story. But I did.
Yeah, I tell clients, it's just not worth it. It really isn't worth it. You really have to take the emotion out of it and remember it's a business. I think if you start getting very emotionally attached, or you're concerned about damage being done or being, financially robbed, you stop. If you use emotion, you're not going to think clearly.
Yeah.
Okay. There's always recourse. Okay. If they damage your property or they owe you money, you go to court and you get a judgment against them. You get the judgment. Possession of judgment, it's on file, it's a lien against them. You can garnish their wages. You can keep that on them for as long as they live. There are legal things that you can do to help.
Jay, but outside of doing cash for keys and bargaining with the tenant, let me ask you, Is there only one true way to evict someone? Is there only
Yes.
one? Gotcha.
One true way. You use a service and you serve them notice to vacate, and you take that affidavit of service and you file the petition in your local court where the property is located, and you let the wheels of justice take over from there.
But that's not to say that we can't do some wheeling and dealing and negotiating while
Yeah.
that process is going, right?
Right, absolutely. So file the paperwork so the clock starts ticking in your favor, and then basically, if somebody's not leaving, they're a scam artist, right? Or
They already know.
Right. We already know that they've already shown you who they are. So yes, if you say to them, "Hey, listen, here's $100. Does that help you get out?" Or you find out, what's your problem? Do you have no place to go? What's the situation? Do you need a meal? Do you need a shower? You try and figure out what's their issue. How can I help them by helping myself? It's no different than somebody facing foreclosure, and you offer them, when you're taking the deed subject to, you offer them some money for moving, or you offer them a night in a hotel, and that's it too. Listen, how about I put you up at whatever local motel it is that's $70 a night, and you go there for the night, and let me get back to my house, and then you figure it out from there. And that's great, because then they're the hotel's problem and they're out. There's always a creative solution.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. That's what we do, Jay. I file the paperwork, then I go down there and I turn on my good hat. I turn on my servant hat. What can I do to help you? You need the money more than me. Here's X dollars. I can get you a truck. Do you need a moving team? Do you need a place to stay? Whatever the solution is, I just want them out. Just get out.
And I completely agree. I find that most people are just desperate.
Yeah.
They're not inherently, right? They don't know how to get out of their own way. They can't think past that temporary, time. And so if you can come to them and offer help, I think you're always going to come out ahead there.
Nice. All right, as we ride out Hurricane Dorian. Is it Dorian?
Yeah.
We are here to serve you still. Let's see what questions we got, Jay. Anthony Martinez, he's called 6 or 7 attorneys. Anthony, that ain't nothing new. I mean, how long do you think it took me to find Jessica? I mean, and all of them told me that you can't do the deal unless the lender is notified. He must be talking about a subject too, Jay.
Oh, okay.
Also, why do they all say it isn't safe to do these deals? Jay, you want to comment on that? Or you want to save that for another day?
Well, if he's talking about subject to,
everybody wants subject to.
Yeah, the issue is that technically the mortgage company can recall the loan if they find out.
Recall the loan. They can.
Yeah, they typically don't. The only time you really see that happening is when the interest rate is higher now than it was on the mortgage, and they think they can get some more money out of it. If the interest rates are really the same, they don't care. They just want it paid every month. That's at the end of the day. But every attorney knows that it's possible, and ethically, attorneys want potential clients to know it can happen.
You can build a house with a hammer. I mean, you can run 1,000 miles. I mean, are you gonna do it?
But what we know is every day, hundreds of people across this country are doing subject to deals. Mortgage hasn't been recalled, and the mortgage company is happy. Their bills are paid. The seller is happy. They avoided a foreclosure on their credit history.
That's right. I guess I have to be tender with these conversations, Jay. At the end of the day, my mentor just says, look, whack the person that says that and just move on. Don't try to do a seminar.
Right.
Don't try to convince them.
Listen, for every 10 attorneys you call, you're going to find one that understands real estate investors.
That's right.
Look and do research, go into Facebook groups, go into real estate investment meetups, look for an attorney who understands investors, and they'll be willing to explain things to you and work with you. And that's what I do. I get it. I understand the creative needs of real estate investors, but I do it within the legal bounds of the law.
I'm glad.
And at the end of the day, I give somebody legal advice. It's up to them whether or not they choose to take it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The only thing I'll say is this: not so much the lender, but make sure if you do a subject to deal, you notify the insurance company if there's any change in terms of ownership, because they may disclaim if they feel they weren't notified properly.
There you go. Yeah, you don't want that's worse than the calling the loan dude. Burn it down.
Yeah.
Jay, I like what you said. They just don't speak the same language that you do, and that's not bad. That's not to say that they're not in business, you know.
Right. I mean, I think I get it because I'm an investor myself. So I'm sort of on both sides of the fence. But there's a lot of attorneys that we weren't trained this stuff in college. I mean, law school. We don't have continuing education classes on this stuff. So unless you really go out there to educate yourself as an investor, it's hard for the lawyer to catch up.
Come to your boy's channel. Unless they come into some channel. I mean, I don't know how are we going to educate the masses, Jessica? How are we?
Our videos. That's what we're going to do.
Jacob, thank you for your help.
I want to work on some web courses with you. That's going to be our next adventure.
Some what?
Like some web courses. We're going to work on some sort of course that we can for the new investor.
We could be teaching. You could be having an attorney thing. You got to be having attorneys.
Yeah.
Anthony, how do you find out about the HOA fees when you're doing the subject to? Good question. Good question.
Okay, so here's the thing. If you're going to try and do subject to deals, you have to be a good communicator. You have to have people skills, right? Right? So, part of the conversation when you're negotiating the subject to deal is to ask them these things. And if at the end of the day, they have no reason to lie to you about it. But if you're purchasing a property in a condo or an HOA type of establishment, you can just call the management office for the property and ask and say, look, I'm considering buying this property. They don't need to know the terms of it. Can you tell me what the HOA costs are or any assessment fees or things like that? Just call the management company.
Yeah, your attorney or a title company has the right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bobby, you're right. Find another attorney. Whack them. Find a new one. Anthony, you can deed it back to the seller. Yes, you can.
Yes, and work out a new deal.
Yeah, that's nothing. Nate just did his third deal. Thank God. You rolling. Oh, Nate said he'll help people for free. There you go. Shoot, you better reach out to Nate. I think that's it, Jake. Okay, final thoughts on this Airbnb thing.
Final thoughts is, be smart about eviction, whether it's a short-term Airbnb or a month-to-month or an annual lease. As frustrating as it is, use the proper legal channels to get people out who are not paying. Safety first. Okay, I always tell people that it's not worth it to get hurt or to end up in jail.
That's right. Okay.
And if they have questions, always feel free to reach out.
That's right. Round Up family, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Comment below. Tell us what some of the obstacles and challenges you're going through with your short-term or Airbnb rental. Jessica, thank you so much. I'll see you next week.
You're welcome. Have a good weekend. Keep safe, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.